Today, we're diving deep into some of the most profound questions about the universe and consciousness. Why did Schrödinger believe that there was only one mind in the universe? Was Schrödinger right in his claim? Is the universe just a giant brain? Is every galaxy a neuron in a vast universal brain? Did consciousness become the universe and create itself? Can it be tested whether the universe is conscious? Is the universe a living organism? Is Earth alive? Is the universe fine-tuned for life and mind? Are we the universe becoming aware of itself? Let's delve into the answers to these questions with a comprehensive scientific perspective. In February of 1943, Erwin Schrödinger, a quantum physicist and Nobel laureate who shared his prize with Paul Dirac and Werner Heisenberg, delivered a series of lectures at Trinity College, Dublin. These lectures later formed the basis for his book titled, What is Life? This publication had a profound impact on a generation of molecular biologists, including Francis Crick, one of the pioneers in the discovery of DNA. What's lesser known is that throughout his lifetime, Schrödinger maintained a strong interest in both Eastern and Western philosophy. Starting from the 1950s, when Schrödinger transitioned away from active engagement with contemporary physics, he increasingly delved into broader philosophical and ethical considerations related to scientific pursuits. During this period, his talks often concluded with a humorous reference to what he dubbed the second Schrödinger equation. Atman equals Brahman, a concept reflecting the Indian notion of identity. Schrödinger's concepts concerning the fundamental underpinnings of life have catalyzed innovative advancements in molecular biology. His musings on the themes of the mind and reality might serve as a catalyst for pioneering endeavors in comprehending the essence of consciousness and its interrelation with the realm of physics. In 1925, just a few months before Schrödinger formulated the foundational equation of quantum mechanics, he sketched out initial concepts that he would subsequently expand upon in his work, Mind and Matter. Even at this early juncture, his exploration of technical aspects was driven by what he perceived as more profound, metaphysical, and even religious inquiries. From the outset, Schrödinger firmly held the belief that metaphysics isn't a consequence of physics. Instead, it naturally precedes it. Metaphysics isn't confined to deduction, but is inherently speculative in nature. One speculative presumption, unverifiable by empirical means, involves the existence of an external world independent of the mind. Another assumption pertains to the existence of distinct minds. Schrödinger asserted that empirical evidence for both these claims is unattainable, given the impossibility of stepping outside our personal experiences to validate them. Yet both assumptions give rise to formidable dilemmas. The former introduces the challenge of conceptualizing the relationship between these two realities, mind and matter. Why does our most advanced science seem to indicate that we inhabit a purely physical realm devoid of subjective qualities? The latter assumption poses the issue of understanding the interplay between different minds, mind and mind. What underlies our individual distinctions? Schrödinger proposed an elegant approach to resolve these predicaments by adopting an alternative metaphysical premise. Although he didn't align with conventional Western viewpoints like reductive materialism or subjective idealism, he drew inspiration from non-Western philosophies, particularly those of Indian origin. The second Schrödinger equation harkens back to an enduring principle within Indian philosophy, where the concept of the self, Atman, aligns with the ultimate reality of the universe, Brahman. This fundamental idea is integral to the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. Schrödinger made a swift clarification that this self should not be confused with the individual self. Rather, it alludes to a universal and cosmic entity of which individual selves are mere facets. Schrödinger often used a metaphor to exemplify this notion, a crystal that generates an array of colors, symbolizing individual selves, through the refraction of light, representing the cosmic self equivalent to the universe's essence. We all constitute facets of a singular collective consciousness, which serves as the core of reality. He also denoted this as the doctrine of identity. Thus, a non-dualistic form of consciousness, distinct from any individual component, provides the foundation for discrediting the seemingly separate existence of selves within a shared world. Schrödinger extracted profound implications from this perspective. For instance, he maintained that any individual is essentially indistinguishable from any predecessor. In his early essay, Seek for the Road, he contemplates gazing at the mountains before him. Millennia ago, Others also relished this same vista. However, he questions why one should assume personal distinctness from these past individuals. Is there any scientific basis that sets apart your experience from that of another person? What establishes your unique identity, rather than blending you with someone else? Analogous to John Wheeler's notion that there exists only a single electron in the universe, Schrödinger posited that there truly exists just one mind. He supported this by pointing out the empirical fact that consciousness is never experienced in the plural, only in the singular. Not only has none of us ever experienced more than one consciousness, but there is also no trace of circumstantial evidence of this ever happening anywhere in the world. In contemporary scientific exploration of consciousness, many scholars attempt to sidestep the question of how and why conscious experience arises from matter. They do so by probing why a perplexing problem seems to manifest, though in reality it doesn't. Consciousness is a fabricated narrative that certain physical systems, equipped with brains, tell themselves. While Schrödinger didn't embrace an illusory perspective regarding the genuine nature of consciousness, he similarly queries why the semblance of multiple minds exists, when, in fact, there is only one mind. The Atman equals Brahman. The notion of numerous distinct minds is an illusory tale that perplexed individuals construct. Contrary to this, recognizing that we are intrinsically linked with other beings, and ultimately with entities conventionally termed non-living matter, dispels the mistaken belief that we are fundamentally isolated. Unlike the hard problem scenario, there exists no empirical substantiation supporting our initial notion as genuine. Schrödinger's approach to metaphysical and philosophical concepts was marked by a notable commitment to maintaining rationality and adhering to scientific methodology. He exercised caution in embracing the doctrine of identity without scrutiny. Instead, he advocated for integrating this doctrine into our most advanced scientific understanding, rather than discarding it altogether. In essence, he advocated for a novel metaphysical framework while upholding the scientific method. Schrödinger emphasized that any infusion of Eastern thought into scientific theories should be done judiciously, avoiding any compromise in the logical precision that characterizes contemporary scientific thought, which stands unparalleled throughout history. Schrödinger's most cherished aspiration was a scientific exploration of consciousness characterized by mathematical rigor. He would have greatly valued an approach that adheres to the doctrine of identity. This approach would require any theory of consciousness to fundamentally recognize that individual conscious entities are constituent elements of a higher, unifying entity, as opposed to being isolated individuals. Additionally, the entire assembly of these conscious beings constitutes the fundamental essence of reality, transcending the status of merely being one among various entities, like electrons, rocks, or brains. Schrödinger envisioned a comprehensive theory that embraces a monist perspective, acknowledging the genuine existence of consciousness. In light of the current landscape in the field of consciousness study, the theory of conscious agents appears to align well with these criteria. This theory aims for a precise and well-defined articulation of the functions of consciousness, proposing that any amalgamation of two or more conscious agents creates another agent. Furthermore, it appears to harmonize with the notion that the entirety of these agents collectively forms the fabric of reality. However, this alignment necessitates the theory to construct a model elucidating how the physical world can originate from and be inherently interconnected with this assembly of conscious agents. How could this concept hold true? Schrödinger's stance rested on arguments previously introduced in philosophy, such as Kant's, but the crux of his position can be distilled to this essence. The physical world, as we term it, emerges through a process Schrödinger termed objectivation. This process involves the transformation of the unified self-world, Atman equals Brahman, into a form that can be objectively conceptualized and studied. Consequently, this form becomes utterly devoid of subjective attributes. Within the theory of conscious agents, this process corresponds to the creation of interfaces. These interfaces streamline complexities to facilitate efficient actions by concealing intricate details. Effective interfaces veil reality as it truly exists, and instead present a version that serves practical utility. What we commonly refer to as the physical world is, in essence, a significantly simplified representation of non-dual consciousness. This apparent physical world also seemingly encompasses numerous conscious subjects directed towards it. The very process of objectivation, which engendered the false notion of an autonomous physical realm, is the same process that generates the fallacy of assuming distinct forms of consciousness existing within separate bodies. Merely adding mental properties to a non-mental world would fail to genuinely address the earlier mentioned challenges. Questions arise. Where would these properties fit? Must they be labeled with tags like individual X? Yet this prompts the inquiry of why one individual is uniquely themselves and not someone else. The challenge of combining sets of subjects into higher entities also remains. However, these predicaments can be evaded by refraining from adopting the metaphysical assumption that inherently opposes the existence of one physical world to numerous isolated selves. As the theory of conscious agents proposes, the notion of fundamentally detached selves becomes a utilitarian construct that emerges when we confuse the interface's appearance with the authentic reality of non-dual consciousness. What if the universe itself possesses self-awareness and consciousness, essentially constituting an enormous mind? This idea raises questions about its scientific basis and potential validity. Let's explore the evidence and engage in speculative thought regarding this concept. One simplistic viewpoint suggests that since humans are composed of elements originating from the cosmos, and we possess consciousness, the universe might also be conscious through us. This is a common response to the question of whether the cosmos is conscious. However, could the universe potentially possess a consciousness distinct from that of humans or any other sentient beings? This concept has a name: Panpsychism. Freeman Dyson, the theoretical physicist renowned for proposing the Dyson sphere, embraced panpsychism and put forward the idea that the universe not only functions through our consciousness, but possesses its own consciousness as well. The question then arises, could this proposition hold validity? To begin, it's crucial to establish a clear definition of consciousness. Giulio Tononi, a neuroscientist and psychiatrist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, has introduced a framework for measuring the level of consciousness in a system. According to his theory, consciousness relates to the extent of control that an entity exercises over itself or its environment. This perspective draws a distinction between intelligence and consciousness, categorizing them as separate entities. Take supercomputers as an example. They exhibit high intelligence and can consistently outperform humans in activities like chess and Jeopardy. However, they lack autonomous agency and operate based on the instructions given by their programmers. Hence, intelligence and consciousness are discernibly different concepts. An entity doesn't necessarily require advanced intelligence to display consciousness. Using this line of reasoning, one can argue that a tree manifests more consciousness than a mere stone. A worm showcases more consciousness than a tree. A feline embodies a higher degree of consciousness than a worm, and a human encompasses greater consciousness than a feline. Following this trajectory, one could speculate that the ultimate consciousness might potentially be inherent within the cosmos itself. If this indeed serves as the mechanism driving consciousness, then the complexity of an organism's neural structure is intricately tied to its level of consciousness. In fact, researchers have amassed compelling evidence pointing towards the brain as the seat of consciousness. Consciousness appears to arise as a result of highly interconnected and communicative systems, much like the human brain. The brain is composed of a complex lattice of neurons that can transmit both chemical and electrical signals, becoming activated by specific stimuli. Neurons, in essence, are triggered by particular stimuli and have the ability to communicate signals among themselves. It's through the extensive and intricate networks formed by these neurons that consciousness seems to manifest. The greater the complexity of this network, the more evident the degree of consciousness becomes. Is there any semblance of such a neural network or interconnecting system in the cosmos? Indeed, there exists a colossal interconnected arrangement of galaxies in the universe, numbering in the hundreds of billions. This structure bears a resemblance to the intricate network of billions of interconnected neurons within the human brain. However, the notable distinction lies in the fact that each individual cell in our brain can communicate with, or at the very least, transmit signals to, its neighboring cells. Is there a comparable communication mechanism among galaxies? Currently, the evidence suggests otherwise. Nevertheless, it's important to remember that at the heart of most galaxies, a black hole resides. This conceptually parallels the nucleus within a brain cell. The workings within a black hole remain enigmatic to us due to the breakdown of our mathematical formulas at the singularity located at its core. This singularity is the point where the conventional notions of space and time cease to hold, and even Einstein's equations falter. Might there be phenomena unfolding beyond our grasp? The analogy between a black hole and a brain cell would only hold if these entities were somehow interconnected and capable of exchanging signals. In such a scenario, an expansive network comprising countless communicating black holes could function as a massive information processor, potentially possessing intelligence and perhaps consciousness. This theoretical concept might imply a sort of superconsciousness, with potential influence over not just our universe, but even time and space itself. However, pragmatically, we should ask, is consciousness truly necessary for the universe to have reached its current state? Essentially, did the unfolding of events that led to our observed reality require consciousness as a guiding factor? Would our immediate reality be notably different if the universe were entirely devoid of consciousness? Currently, there is no evidence indicating that consciousness is a requisite for steering the processes that led to our present state. Scientific understanding allows for evolution to progress autonomously over vast stretches of time without any external conductor. Regarding the inception of time, could consciousness have played a role in the occurrence of the Big Bang? This possibility cannot be dismissed outright. It's conceivable that consciousness had a part to play. However, labeling this event as influenced by a universally inspired consciousness without concrete evidence is as speculative as proposing it originated from yet-to-be uncovered laws of physics. Furthermore, there is no substantiated proof that events following the Big Bang have been guided by consciousness, as post-Big Bang occurrences can largely be explained within the established framework of known physical laws. And these laws do not demand consciousness to be set in motion. Christoph Koch, a neuroscientist and former professor at Caltech, contends that living organisms possess consciousness due to their capacity to adapt their behavior when faced with novel circumstances. He considers this a method to measure the extent of an organism's consciousness. Consequently, even a tree displays consciousness through behaviors like shedding leaves in winter and defending against diseases. Does our universe fulfill this measurement criterion for consciousness? The universe seems to follow a consistent path regardless of circumstances. The laws of physics appear to apply uniformly across the observable universe, with no instances of deviation from these laws having been identified. Certainly, there are unresolved mysteries, such as dark matter and dark energy. However, these elements exhibit consistent behavior across the universe and adhere to predictable patterns. If the universe were making decisions, we might expect some degree of unpredictability in its actions. Actions that couldn't be solely attributed to predictable factors, but rather to conscious choices. So, what explains the precise structure of the universe, like the finely tuned gravitational constant or other fundamental principles that allow galaxies to form from stars and planets from stellar remnants? Moreover, complex molecules can develop on these planets, gradually leading to conscious beings. Is this the result of chance, or does it stem from a deeper causality? Could it be a form of consciousness that permeates the cosmos, giving it purpose? Those with religious beliefs might argue for a divine role. Advocates of Panpsychism might propose that a conscious universe established these laws from the beginning to optimize its value. A materialistic perspective might assert that no meticulous calibration or decision-maker is necessary. In a multiverse with numerous universes and ample time, a universe like ours, conducive to the evolution of intelligent consciousness, is likely to emerge. In our vast cosmos, there are approximately 200 billion galaxies. These galaxies don't distribute evenly due to gravitational forces. They cluster into groups, which then form larger superclusters. Within these clusters, galaxies align along thin structures called galactic filaments, stretching for millions of light years. The spaces between these structures, known as voids, contain minimal matter. This cosmic arrangement somewhat bears resemblance to the human brain. To delve deeper, the distribution of matter in the universe holds some parallels with the connectome, the intricate network of nerve connections within the human brain. In a similar manner, neurons in the brain cluster and communicate through axons, long fibers transmitting electrical signals. This resemblance between the universe and the human brain goes beyond the surface. A comprehensive study carried out in 2020 by Italian astrophysicist Franco Vazza and neuroscientist Alberto Feletti explored this connection extensively. They quantified the structures found in the connectum of the human brain and the cosmic web, revealing a striking similarity. On scales smaller than about 1 millimeter for brain samples, and in the distribution of matter across the universe, up to around 300 million light-years, they found structural resemblances. Is it conceivable that the universe might operate as an enormous brain, with individual galaxies playing the role of neurons? Could this be a form of introspection as we ponder these questions? Granted, the true nature of consciousness remains an unsolved puzzle. However, what we do know is that brains, the only entities we are fairly certain are capable of thought, possess numerous connections and transmit vast amounts of information through these connections. Despite our limited understanding of consciousness, the extensive interconnectedness and rapid signaling seen in the brain seem conducive to cognitive processes. The structural likeness between the universe and the brain leads us to contemplate the potential existence of comparable cognitive capacities. However, the cosmos and the human brain exhibit distinct differences, primarily stemming from the universe's expansion, which is accelerating. If we were to compare galaxy clusters to neurons in the universe's brain, these clusters would be rapidly moving apart, a trend spanning billions of years. Another significant distinction lies in the considerable time it takes for signals to traverse the universe. Neurons in the human brain emit around 50 signals per second, with the majority, 80%, being short-range, covering a mere 1 millimeter. However, about 20% involve longer distances, linking different brain regions. Both types are vital for cognitive processes. Signal transmission within the brain occurs at a speed of approximately 100 meters per second, a million times slower than the speed of light. Yet, due to the brain's small size, these signals efficiently navigate its pathways within fractions of a second. In contrast, the universe currently spans about 90 billion light-years in diameter, and according to Albert Einstein's principles, no entity can surpass the speed of light. Consequently, even if one part of the hypothetical universe brain were to communicate with the other part, an astonishing 90 billion years would be required, even at the speed of light. Transmitting a single signal to our nearest neuron, the galaxy cluster M81, would demand a minimum of approximately 11 million years. Hence, the universe's optimistic potential for information exchange among its closest neurons has likely occurred around 1,000 times since the Big Bang. If we disregard long-range connections, this figure pales in comparison to what our brain achieves in a mere 3 minutes. Furthermore, as the universe continues to expand, its ability to internally connect diminishes, suggesting a declining trajectory. Consequently, if the universe does engage in cognitive processes, its capacity for contemplation appears considerably limited. For most physicists, this perspective draws the narrative to a close. Yet, what if the universe's vastness isn't as expansive as we perceive it to be? Scientists at DeepMind, a Google-owned company, recently trained an artificial intelligence in the realm of physics. They exposed the algorithm to hours of video content, enabling it to grasp various principles, including the notion that objects don't spontaneously vanish. They exhibit continuous motion from one point to nearby locations. In the realm of physics, this concept is known as locality, a fundamental aspect of nature that remains among the least understood. However, the challenge surpasses our lack of comprehension regarding why the universe adheres to locality. Uncertainty remains about whether locality holds on the subatomic scale. If it turns out otherwise, the implications could be profound. The hypothesis proposes that space might harbor concealed connections, distinct from local ones, resembling portals. Entering one end would instantly transport to a different location. However, these minute non-local connections would need to be incredibly small, too tiny for either us or elementary particles to traverse, as their effects would have already been detected. Nevertheless, they would establish connections within the fabric of space itself. This concept suggests that locations seemingly distant from each other in the universe might actually be close in reality, with the universe's vastness being a perceptual distortion influenced by our limited perspective. Many scientists in the field of physics are seriously considering this concept for various compelling reasons. Firstly, we understand that quantum phenomena can create strong non-local connections between particles. This phenomenon, known as entanglement, is responsible for the computational advantage of quantum computers. While entanglement doesn't enable the non-local transfer of information, it does challenge the notion that locality, governing the behavior of objects, is the sole truth. Additionally, Einstein's theory of gravity suggests the existence of wormholes, shortcuts between distant points in space. While significant wormholes cannot exist in our universe due to their prompt closure, their role within the quantum realm remains uncertain. Solving this puzzle requires a comprehensive theory about the quantum properties of space, a challenge that has remained unsolved despite over 80 years of investigation. Quantum wormholes could potentially contribute to the emergence of non-local connections, as plausible as that may be. Moreover, the issue of information annihilation by black holes arises. Once something crosses an event horizon, it seemingly needs to surpass the speed of light to escape. However, a non-local connection spanning the horizon could provide an avenue for information escape. Some physicists have speculated that dark matter, a hypothetical substance accounting for 85% of the universe's mass, might be misunderstood. It's possible that only normal matter exists, with its gravitational influence enhanced and distributed through non-local connections across different locations. Therefore, a universe interwoven by non-local connections would hold significant implications for various reasons. If these hypotheses hold weight, the universe might be teeming with tiny gateways linking seemingly distant regions. Physicists Fotini Markopoulou and Lee Smolin proposed that our universe could potentially host a staggering 10 to the power of 360 non-local connections. Notably, since these connections are inherently non-local, their expansion alongside the universe's growth would be irrelevant. To put it in perspective, the human brain comprises just 10 to the power of 15 connections. It is crucial to highlight that there is currently no solid evidence substantiating the presence of non-local connections, and even less so, their potential contribution to bestowing cognitive abilities upon the universe. However, it would be unwise to completely disregard this potentiality. Despite its unconventional character, the notion of an intelligent universe corresponds well with our existing repository of knowledge in a holistic fashion. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that entities such as photons, electrons, and atoms can exist in a state of superposition, indicating their potential to occupy multiple states and positions simultaneously. These entities are characterized as probability waves until measured, at which point their probability distributions collapse, resulting in the emergence of specific particle properties. One perspective regarding this phenomenon proposes that the act of measurement necessitates an observer or conscious entity. If this viewpoint holds validity, it implies that consciousness plays a significant role in shaping the observed reality. This raises the question of whether consciousness is a prerequisite for reality formation, suggesting that reality is contingent upon consciousness, and that the universe manifests only in the presence of an observer. The answer to this profound inquiry is on the horizon. Experiments can illustrate that entities traditionally understood as particles, such as electrons and atoms, actually exhibit wave-like behavior, manifesting as probability waves. This forms the foundational principle of quantum mechanics, and the well-known double-slit experiment serves as a key example to elucidate this concept. For instance, if individual atoms are directed through dual slits and a detection screen is placed on the opposite side, repeated trials reveal that these individual atoms do not exhibit the typical pattern associated with distinct particles, namely, two separate bands of particles. Instead, they produce an interference pattern resembling the behavior of waves. This analogy can be drawn from the pattern generated by water waves as they pass through two openings. This suggests that the atom passing through the slit might be interacting with itself or with other atoms that are on the verge of being projected, but have yet to traverse the slits. While this might seem somewhat unconventional, the idea that atoms demonstrate behavior akin to oceanic waves rather than solid particles is generally digestible. However, what truly challenges credibility and defies common understanding is that when attempts are made to gain insights into the processes occurring at the slits, achieved by introducing a detector to observe the atom's behavior, these atoms abruptly transition from wave-like behavior to particle-like behavior. As a result, this behavior becomes detectable on the screen positioned behind the slits. One could suggest, perhaps the detectors somehow interfere with the flow of atoms. Maybe when photons from the detectors bounce off the atoms and reach the detector, this disturbance affects the atom, leading to the collapse of its probability wave. However, if the detectors are kept in place but rendered inactive, refraining from actual measurements, The screen once again displays an interference pattern. Interestingly, as soon as the detectors are reactivated, the interference pattern disappears. The underlying mechanism behind these behaviors of atoms and other particles raises intriguing questions. Numerous explanations have been put forward to account for this phenomenon. The most widely accepted theory is known as the Copenhagen interpretation, which was formulated in 1925 by quantum mechanics pioneers Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg at the University of Copenhagen. According to this interpretation, when an atom is not observed, it doesn't possess a definite state. Rather, it exists in the form of a probability wave. This implies that it could potentially exist in multiple locations simultaneously, each with distinct properties. Every potential state and its associated properties are accompanied by a specific probability. This probability distribution is responsible for the wave-like patterns observed in the behavior of these particles. However, when the particle undergoes measurement, this probability wave collapses, transforming the particle into a well-defined entity with specific characteristics and a precise position. However, the Copenhagen interpretation doesn't explicitly address the role of consciousness. It simply asserts that measurement causes the particle to acquire definite properties. But what exactly qualifies as a measurement? Is it when the measurement device records data? Does it happen when a human observer perceives the result? Does it involve the human brain's interpretation of the outcome? Or does it occur somewhere in the midst of these stages? Is consciousness an essential prerequisite for measurement? This question is known as the measurement problem in quantum mechanics. The heart of this issue lies in the absence of a definitive answer, leading to extensive debates among physicists over time. A universally agreed-upon solution to this dilemma remains elusive, resulting in the existence of various interpretations. An alternative viewpoint is the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation, which suggests that in the complex chain of events leading up to measurement, the collapse of the wave function occurs at the point where consciousness, likely human consciousness, interprets the measurement results. To put it differently, the awareness of the physicist is what distinguishes the particle. Devoid of this awareness, the atom would remain a mere web of possibilities. However, this triggers a plethora of potential inquiries regarding the essence of consciousness and its engagement in this process. Could the consciousness of a reptile or an invertebrate also trigger the collapse of a probability wave? Various alternative interpretations vie for attention. Among the captivating perspectives, the many worlds interpretation holds a prominent place, introduced by Hugh Everett in 1957 during his graduate studies at Princeton University. Back then, his proposal faced ridicule, yet ironically, it has gained traction among physicists today, more than 60 years later. This idea suggests that collapse never actually occurs. While we might perceive a measurement in our reality, such a measurement doesn't take place in a divergent reality. The wave function persists within that separate branch of reality, giving rise to an endless array of branches branching off from a singular reality into distinct ones. This implies the existence of multiple worlds or universes, each accommodating different measurements, observations, or even their absence. In certain branches of reality, the collapse of the particle's wave function is a non-event. What we observe is merely one measurement within our reality, with other realities beyond our grasp. Recent evidence seems to offer support for the concept of multiple realities. A 2019 paper authored by Massimo Leonardi at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh suggests that, at a quantum level, at least two equally valid realities could coexist simultaneously. However, this raises questions about the nature of reality itself. It could imply that the concept of objective reality is transient. The idea of numerous reality branches introduces a complexity that unsettles many. Nonetheless, several renowned physicists, including Sean Carroll, lend their support to this idea. So, what is the definitive answer? Does the many worlds interpretation accurately portray reality, where the wave function remains uncollapsed, leading to the proliferation of countless new worlds with diverse outcomes? Does an observer's consciousness or intention play a pivotal role? Could it be that without an observer to set up the experiment and interpret the results, collapse wouldn't occur? Or is the Copenhagen interpretation suggesting that measurement triggers collapse and observation is crucial while consciousness is not? What is the most plausible, albeit speculative, answer? First, let's recapitulate established facts. It's evident that measuring the which-way specifics of a particle indeed results in the collapse of the particle's uncertainty wave. There's no way to bypass this reality. The position of the detector, whether positioned before or after the particle passes through the slit, doesn't change this phenomenon. Furthermore, this collapse remains consistent whether moving forward or backward in time, as demonstrated by the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment elaborated in the linked source. This implies that attempting to measure the particle after it has entered the slit, seemingly beyond the point of any collapse decision, is ineffective. The particle appears immune to the chronological direction of time. Consequently, preemptively investigating events before an expected collapse becomes unfeasible. In relation to the many worlds interpretation, its compatibility with the equations of quantum mechanics is evident. However, due to the inherent inaccessibility of these alternate worlds, definitive verification remains beyond reach. Thus, the potential validity of this interpretation doesn't inherently establish its truth. The Copenhagen interpretation enjoys widespread acceptance and seems reasonable from a neutral standpoint. Notably, it doesn't necessitate consciousness for the interpretation or observation of outcomes. The challenge appears to arise from the term observation, which many tend to associate with visual scrutiny, implying that consciousness resides in the act of seeing. Nevertheless, within the framework of quantum mechanics, this understanding departs from the intended significance of observation. Unfortunately, the use of observation in this context contributes to confusion. In this context, observation refers to the interaction between two quantum states capable of collapsing each other's probability wave functions. This interaction can manifest in various ways. Does consciousness play a role? Probably not. Recent evidence provides some support for this notion. In a 2011 paper authored by Shan Yu and Danko Nicola, it was demonstrated that conscious observation wasn't indispensable for collapse. Their experiments focused on measuring particle which-way information, which was encoded in the state of an atom. Although this information remained beyond the reach of conscious observers, it was preserved within the atom, accessible to the universe. Hence, it appears that as long as the information remains conserved within the universe, wave collapse occurs even in the absence of a physicist's consciousness to perceive or interpret it. In summary, the proposition that something observes the universe into existence is plausible, yet this observer need not necessarily possess consciousness. Werner Heisenberg aptly observed, "What we probe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning." Panpsychism posits that consciousness pervades the cosmos, not only within humans and animals, but also in trees, plants, and bacteria. Advocates of panpsychism assert that some form of mentality exists even within elementary particles. The notion that consciousness extends widely holds appeal for both intellectual and potentially emotional reasons. Can this concept be subjected to empirical examination? Remarkably, it might be possible, largely due to the alignment between panpsychism and one of the most prominent scientific theories of consciousness, integrated information theory. According to the viewpoint of American philosopher Thomas Nagel, consciousness manifests when there exists something that it is like to be a particular entity in the state it occupies. A human brain in a state of wakefulness is endowed with a distinct experiential quality. Integrated information theory delineates a distinct numerical value, termed the integrated information, represented by the symbol phi for a given system. If phi is 0, the system lacks any experiential aspect. It essentially lacks a holistic existence, as it can be fully deconstructed into its constituent elements. As phi increases, a system's consciousness augments, becoming more intricate and less reducible. With an accurate and comprehensive description of a system, integrated information theory anticipates both the quantity and quality of its experiential facet, if present. The theory posits that, due to the structural attributes of the human brain, individuals possess elevated phi values, while animals exhibit smaller yet positive values, and classical digital computers nearly none. However, an individual's phi value isn't static. It ascends during early childhood as the self develops and might decline with the onset of cognitive impairments like dementia. Phi experiences fluctuations during sleep, expanding during dreams and contracting during deep dreamless stages. Integrated information theory commences by identifying 5 inherent and essential attributes encompassing all conceivable conscious experiences. For instance, experiences exhibit definiteness, exclusion. This signifies that an experience is neither diminished, restricted to perceiving the color blue without encompassing the image of the ocean that evoked the color, nor augmented beyond its confines, such as perceiving the ocean while simultaneously being cognizant of the canopy of trees behind. In a subsequent phase, integrated information theory deduces 5 linked physical attributes that any system, be it a brain, computer, pine tree, or sand dune, must demonstrate to possess a conscious quality. Within integrated information theory, a mechanism is anything that plays a causal role in a system, encompassing logical gates in computers or neurons in the brain. Integrated information theory contends that consciousness emerges solely within systems of mechanisms characterized by a specific structure. Simplified somewhat, this structure must exhibit maximal integration, defying accurate depiction through the deconstruction of its constituent parts. Moreover, it must exert causal influence upon itself, implying that the current state of a given mechanism should constrain not only its future states, but also those of the entire system. With a meticulous physical portrayal of a system in hand, the theory offers a means to compute the system's phi. While the intricacies of this process are complex, the core implication is that, theoretically, one can objectively gauge a system's phi, provided an accurate portrayal is available. We can calculate the phi of computers since we possess precise knowledge of their construction. Estimating the phi of a human brain remains a work in progress. Assessments can be conducted at various levels. Phi could be gauged for a sugar cube-sized portion of my brain, for my entire brain, or for both of us collectively. Likewise, the phi of a silicon atom, a specific microchip circuit, or an amalgamation of microchips forming a supercomputer could be measured. According to the theory, consciousness is present in systems where phi reaches its maximum value. It's a feature of all such systems, exclusively. The phi of my brain surpasses the phi values of its individual constituents, regardless of the method employed for subdivision. Hence, I possess consciousness. However, the combined phi of you and me is less than either my phi or your phi, indicating that we aren't jointly conscious. Nonetheless, if future technology facilitates the establishment of robust communication between our brains, this bridging could engender a single consciousness, diffused across 4 cortical hemispheres. Conversely, the phi of a supercomputer is inferior to the phis of its composing circuits, rendering a supercomputer, in spite of its scale and potency, devoid of consciousness. The theory anticipates that even if a deep learning system were to pass the Turing test, it would be a zombie, simulating consciousness, but not genuinely conscious. Similar to Panpsychism, integrated information theory regards consciousness as an intrinsic, fundamental facet of reality, graded and presumably prevalent throughout the tree of life. Any system possessing a non-zero degree of integrated information will exhibit an aspect of conscious experience. This doesn't entail that a bee experiences corpulence or makes weekend plans. However, a bee can experience a degree of contentment when returning sunlit and pollen-laden to its hive. Upon a bee's demise, its consciousness ceases. Similarly, due to the immense intricacy even within a single cell, with millions of proteins interacting, it might experience a minuscule semblance of consciousness. Debating the essence of consciousness might initially appear academic, yet it carries tangible and significant ramifications. Notably, it impacts our perception of individuals in vegetative states. These patients might emit groans or unprovoked movements, but fail to respond to commands in a purposeful manner, like moving their eyes or nodding. Are they conscious minds ensnared within their impaired bodies, able to perceive but unable to communicate? Or are they devoid of consciousness? Evaluating consciousness presence in such patients poses challenges. Integrated information theory proponents have devised a method to test consciousness in unresponsive individuals. They establish an array of EEG electrodes to measure brain electrical activity. Subsequently, they apply a gentle magnetic pulse to the brain and record the resultant echoes. These echoes enable computation of a perturbational complexity index, representing the echo's complexity. In individuals who are conscious and healthy, or those with brain damage yet clearly conscious, the perturbational complexity index consistently surpasses a specific threshold. Conversely, when healthy people sleep, their perturbational complexity index invariably falls below this threshold. Hence, perturbational complexity index can be reasonably utilized as a proxy for the existence of conscious awareness. If an individual in a persistent vegetative state consistently displays a perturbational complexity index below this threshold, it can be confidently inferred that covert consciousness is absent. This approach is under exploration in several clinical centers across the United States and Europe. Other assessments strive to validate integrated information theory's forecasts concerning the location and temporal aspects of sensory consciousness markers in the brains of humans, non-human primates, and mice. Unlike panpsychism, integrated information theory's striking propositions can undergo empirical verification. Should they withstand scrutiny, science might have uncovered a method to disentangle a quandary that has confounded philosophers throughout history. The living universe hypothesis posits that the universe functions akin to a living organism. Accordingly, it exhibits traits inherent to living entities, including being composed of information and shaped by processes like metabolism, adaptation, and natural selection. Moreover, this hypothesis aligns with the cosmological perspective that our universe could transition into other universes. As a living organism, the universe undergoes birth, growth, and eventual demise. Its inception is attributed to the Big Bang, the direct catalyst for our existing universe. Continuously expanding and spawning new galaxies, the universe also shares the attribute of growth. Ultimately, it will face its demise upon depletion of its energy reserves. The coherent application of concepts that explain the universe, similar to how we interpret living organisms, substantiates the assertion that the universe functions as a living entity. Otherwise, such analogous interpretation wouldn't be feasible. According to a prevailing scientific paradigm, the universe comprises information and information exchanges, as articulated by physicist John Wheeler. If the universe is indeed an assemblage of information, it inherently mirrors a living organism's composition, which is contingent upon biological genetic information. Therefore, the scientific proposition positing the universe as information implies its status as a living organism. This implication underscores the plausibility of the living universe hypothesis, given its alignment with the dominant scientific paradigm. Analogous to living organisms, our universe exhibits metabolism, a process of converting substance into energy. This phenomenon manifests within the universe as it transforms mass into energy, exemplified by the sun's energy production. In this context, the universe functions analogously to a living organism, subject to metabolism, specifically cosmic metabolism, which involves the conversion of mass into various energy forms. The principle of mass-energy equivalence in physics asserts the equivalence of mass and energy. Consequently, mass can be converted into energy. This mirrors the metabolic process within living organisms, wherein food is transformed into energy. Thus, cosmic metabolism is an actual phenomenon, providing the universe with its energy. The universe exhibits cosmic adaptation, mirroring the behavior of living organisms. This correspondence underscores the universe's vitality, as it behaves analogously to living entities. The universe's environment encompasses parallel worlds, and within this context, the actual universe adapts to these parallel universes, constituting its surroundings. These parallel worlds are characterized by distinct natural laws and realities. In one instance, particles such as electrons assume the form of particles, while in another, they adopt wave-like properties. Consequently, as our universe adapts to these diverse parallel universes, it assimilates the behaviors of these distinct realities. This leads our universe to exhibit behaviors akin to particles being both particles and waves simultaneously, in alignment with the principles of quantum mechanics. This convergence demonstrates the success of the living universe hypothesis in elucidating the reason behind our universe's dual behavior of particles. Cosmic natural selection is another phenomenon analogous to the evolutionary process in living organisms governing our universe. The cosmic adaptation hypothesis posits that our universe adapts to parallel universes. Consequently, our universe is subjected to cosmic natural selection, favoring attributes that facilitate adaptation to varied parallel universes. One such attribute chosen by cosmic natural selection is the duality of particles as particles and waves. This selection reflects the universe's propensity to adapt to differing parallel universes, where particles exhibit varying behaviors. In essence, the cosmic adaptation hypothesis and the resultant cosmic natural selection are illustrated by the universe's capacity to embrace traits that enable it to harmonize with the diverse array of parallel universes. exemplified by the dual nature of particles. This mechanism mirrors the concept of natural selection observed in living organisms and underscores the hypothesis's explanatory potency, rendering it a plausible framework. Certain scientists are delving into cosmic evolution, with Eric Chesson defining it as the exploration of change. Observably, change is ubiquitous. Objects evolve and decay. From this vantage point, it becomes plausible that the laws of nature, akin to objects, undergo evolution and decay, eventually giving way to new laws. This cycle parallels the evolution, decay, and replacement observed in all components of our universe. If the laws of nature can indeed evolve, decay, and be substituted with new laws, then the potential arises for our present universe to transition into alternate universes governed by distinct laws, an idea espoused by the Universe hypothesis. If this hypothesis holds merit, our universe operates under the auspices of cosmic evolution, undergoing transformation into diverse universes. This aligns with the pattern observed in living organisms subject to evolution. This perspective lends support to the notion that our universe is akin to a living organism, for without this likeness, evolution as seen in living organisms would lack a parallel. Evolution is underpinned by mutation, which entails structural modifications in biological genes, leading to changes in living organisms. Given that biological genes represent repositories of information shaping living entities, mutation amounts to information alteration within a living system. If the universe possesses vitality, it could undergo mutation akin to living organisms. This implies that its laws, akin to sets of information governing universal behavior, could change. Consequently, facts and events within the universe could also shift, ultimately engendering the transformation of one universe into another. The living universe hypothesis asserts that our universe is a transformant universe capable of transitioning into versions with varying laws, facts, and occurrences. This proposition signifies that the hypothesis could be scrutinized via its implications, including the notion of cosmic mutation enabling universe-to-universe transformations. The coherence between the living universe hypothesis and the cosmological theory highlighting the existence of transformant universes underscores this perspective. Any universe holds the potential for transformation due to cosmic mutation, unless a peculiar mechanism prohibits such changes, akin to a meta-law dictating against universe-to-universe transitions. The likelihood of an all-encompassing prohibiting meta-law is remote, as it would manifest as an all-powerful deity, an unscientific notion. Consequently, the concept of universes undergoing transformation via cosmic mutation gains credence. Cosmic mutation encompasses the capacity of any universe to transition into alternative universes with distinct laws and facts. In alignment with the cosmic mutation hypothesis, universes undergo mutation, allowing for a universe's transformation into a different counterpart. This notion implies the existence of transformant universes, where traces of alternative universes might be discernible within any given universe. The validity of this inference determines the validity of the cosmic mutation hypothesis itself. Consequently, the cosmic mutation hypothesis can be subjected to testing, rendering it amenable to scientific scrutiny. Similarly, the living universe hypothesis is amenable to scientific testing. One potential test involves examining the assertion that the universe, as a living organism, undergoes growth, aging, and eventual demise. If contrary evidence were to arise, discrediting this conclusion, it would subsequently challenge the validity of the living universe hypothesis. Therefore, the living universe hypothesis is also testable, and its potential to be tested establishes its status as a scientific hypothesis. In ancient Greece, the term Gaia was applied to both the Earth itself, symbolizing the great mother goddess, and the physical planet, encompassing both terrain and sphere. These two designations were used interchangeably, underscoring the reverence for Earth as a nearly sacred entity, undeniably alive and dynamic. The concept experienced a revival in the 1970s when scientist James Lovelock introduced the Gaia theory. This theory proposed that Earth functions akin to a living organism, capable of maintaining equilibrium by autonomously adapting to external influences. Since then, the idea of Gaia has persistently influenced diverse dialogues, spanning from romanticism to environmentalism, and it remains ecologically pertinent in the present era. Fundamentally, The Gaia Hypothesis bestows Earth with a vitality akin to all forms of life found on it, encompassing both human and non-human entities. This vitality manifests in Earth's capacity to autonomously regulate crucial aspects of its surface to create an environment conducive to life's existence. Examples include the composition of gases in the atmosphere, average temperatures, and the pH and salinity levels of oceans. Analogous to how our hearts control our heartbeat to sustain life, Lovelock suggested that organisms and their physical surroundings evolve as an integrated system, within which nature maintains a continuous self-regulation within the limits compatible with life. Yet a question arises: if the Gaia hypothesis holds true, how can it account for mass extinctions? If Earth is consistently self-regulating within the confines life can endure, why do specific species exhibit a propensity to perish when subjected to internal or external pressures? Extensive literature delves into mass extinctions and this matter, although we won't delve into it here. Lovelock put forth his own explanation, likening Gaia's functioning to that of natural selection. According to Gaia theory, organisms not only adapt to their physical environment, but also possess the capability to modify it. The progression of advantageous traits leads to the survival of the fittest, and as these traits become more prevalent in the environment, localized enhancements can trigger global repercussions. The inevitability of extinction exists, and the fittest might experience short-term benefits. The ultimate victor, however, remains life itself, as demonstrated by its continual endurance throughout the passage of evolutionary time. Furthermore, Earth's alignment with the Gaian concept doesn't demand flawless regulation. Gaian regulation mirrors the physiological regulation found within human beings. Our bodily systems function just adequately to ensure our survival. To illustrate, in the pursuit of maintaining internal stability, our core body temperatures vary within the range of 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. Similarly, Earth maintains its average surface temperature within the span of 11 to 16 degrees Celsius, a range that effectively sustains life over extended periods of evolution. In spite of the formulation of this resilient hypothesis, it stirred controversy within established scientific circles and continues to be a subject of substantial disagreement in the present era. The evocative name of the theory might have lent it an air of revolution due to its poetic nature, possibly leading some to perceive it as groundbreaking while lacking in substantial foundation. After all, the term Gaia Hypothesis was coined by classicist William Golding, a close friend of Lovelock's and the recognizable author of the well-known novel Lord of the Flies. However, the more probable reason for the persistent controversy surrounding Gaia theory lies in how it disrupts the power dynamics between humanity and the Earth, which is likely the core source of its contentious nature. The Gaia Hypothesis introduces a groundbreaking perspective that reimagines Earth as a living entity, an independent organism with the remarkable ability to regenerate its own components, even down to the molecular level. This departure from the customary perception of our Earth system, often likened to a lifeless mechanism, challenges the notion of predictability. This conventional view portrays our planet as lacking agency and consequently susceptible to human control. Gaia theory positions humanity as merely a constituent of the natural world, sharing equal footing with the flora and fauna we frequently exploit. This shift places constraints on our human prerogatives in response to the demands of our planetary companions, altering the traditional power dynamic. Understandably, this concept was likely met with resistance in the scientific community of its time, and its implications continue to provoke contemplation even today. Presently, traces of Gaia theory are discernible within scientific orthodoxy, particularly evident in the evolution of interdisciplinary fields related to the Earth system, often denoted as systems theory or complexity theory. In the Gaian perspective, Earth emerges as a cohesive entity, wherein humans constitute a minute component, and a greater emphasis is placed on the synchronization and interconnectedness of the natural world. This sacred outlook can be traced back to Gaia, the great mother goddess herself. Gaia serves as a humble instructor, highlighting that our impact on Earth's functioning is dwarfed by its complexity, despite our species' intelligence and continual technological advancements that inadvertently disrupt it. We stand on equal footing with the various life forms she has birthed, whether it's the grass beneath our feet, the birds above us, or even the worms burrowed deep within the ground. Gaia serves as a reminder that we are integral parts of a grander whole, embodying Aristotle's notion that the totality exceeds the sum of its individual components. This perspective underscores our ethical duty to treat Mother Earth with greater consideration, recognizing our place as a small fragment of her existence. In this system, our role should involve collaborative efforts to support and aid her, as such actions inherently translate to betterment for ourselves and generations to come. People have often gazed at the night sky and pondered whether there might be others like us out there. Yet, if one gazes into that darkness for an extended period, a different question arises. How did we come into being? In a vast and chaotic universe, what were the chances of humans existing at all? Can the emergence of life, especially intelligent life, be so astronomically improbable that we are the sole beings? Or is our existence an unavoidable outcome of the fundamental laws of physics? Given that life exists on Earth, barring the assumption of living in a simulated reality, the structure of the universe must allow for our possibility. This encapsulates the core of the Anthropic Principle. While on the surface it might seem redundant, it holds deeper implications about the nature of the cosmos. Essentially, any conceivable version of the universe must be compatible with the existence of life at least once. Whenever there are aspects of the universe that elude our comprehension, such as the mechanisms behind dark energy or the origin of the cosmos, all the hypotheses we devise must account for our existence. The universe is bound to accommodate us. Certain individuals have taken the Anthropic Principle to its extreme implications. It can suggest that the universe is inclined to support life, or even life resembling humans, although these notions aren't identical. Considering the immense array of possibilities the universe could have taken, the existence of humans does appear implausible. This doesn't solely refer to scenarios such as a delayed asteroid impact altering evolution on Earth. A more fundamental aspect is the notion that lacking a moon and the resulting tidal effects, creatures on Earth might never have ventured beyond aquatic environments. However, delving even deeper, the laws of physics themselves seem tailor-made for us. An earlier iteration of the Anthropic Principle argument revolves around the Hoyle state, a specific state of a particular carbon variant. The presence of the Hoyle state is crucial for stars to produce the amount of carbon they do, and carbon serves as the foundational element for life. Despite not fully comprehending the workings of the Hoyle state for a considerable time, it was understood that it must exist. Our existence underscores this fact. More recently, scientists have highlighted that minor adjustments to various dimensionless physical constants, numbers like pi that lack unit dependencies and exist as fundamental concepts, would render our observed cosmos non-existent. One of these constants is omega, representing the density parameter, which balances the gravitational pull against the expansive force of dark energy. Had gravity been stronger, the universe would have ceased expansion and collapsed in a reverse Big Bang, often termed the Big Crunch. Alternatively, if dark energy were more potent, the universe would expand so rapidly that matter wouldn't coalesce, preventing the formation of stars, planets, and life forms. Considering the cosmos as a randomly arranged collection of particles, it appears perplexing or suspicious to many that these two opposing forces are finely tuned in such a delicate equilibrium. However, it's important to recall the tautological perspective. If the universe had taken any other form, we wouldn't exist to contemplate it. Naturally, the universe seems fine-tuned from our vantage point. After all, it's the only one we are acquainted with. This line of reasoning raises inquiries about the potential existence of a multiverse. Could there be alternate universes where the laws of physics don't permit the coalescence of matter to give rise to stars, planets, as well as creatures like cats and dogs? The Anthropic Principle alone doesn't furnish an answer to this question, leaving us in a state of contemplation. The reality is that our current data reserves are quite limited. Our direct exploration has touched only 2 celestial bodies in the entire expanse of the universe, with a handful more visited by probes. Beyond that, our knowledge heavily relies on remote imaging techniques and a substantial dose of semi-applied mathematics. We might inquire about the frequency with which the universe offers the conditions we consider vital for life. The Drake equation makes an earnest effort to quantify this, but it assumes a semblance to life as we know it. What if there are inorganic life forms? The feasibility of life forms, significantly differing from terrestrial examples, has been debated by scientists, taking into account chemical factors both for and against such possibilities. The relevance of the Hoyle state might diminish if other life forms don't necessitate carbon. Engaging in this line of questioning can lead to mind-bending considerations. Recognizing life vastly distinct from us becomes a puzzle, and it even prompts us to contemplate whether rocks could possess sentience while we remain engrossed in our bias toward carbon-based life. Undeniably, the universe does exhibit an appearance of being tailored to accommodate our existence. Conversely, it's equally valid to assert that we are undeniably attuned to the universe we find ourselves in. Prepare a sheet of paper and draw a vertical line down its center. On one side, jot down everything you're certain possesses consciousness. On the opposite side, list all the things you're confident lack consciousness. Unless you're among those who deny consciousness, it's highly likely that you'll categorize human beings as conscious. You might also include certain animals in that category. It's a fair assumption that you'll classify items like rocks and potato peelers as unconscious, unless you hold beliefs aligned with New Age thinking or exhibit mental imbalance. However, one element you're unlikely to include in the conscious column is the universe. For most individuals, the notion of considering the universe as a conscious entity appears exceedingly far-fetched. This perspective is so unconventional that even those who approach matters with a scientific mindset would hesitate to discuss it openly with fellow scientifically oriented peers. Nevertheless, despite its seemingly peculiar nature, this concept actually emerges as a logical implication of evolutionary theory. This scenario holds true under the assumption that both the body and the mind have evolved. This perspective is widely endorsed today. We are aware that the mind's functioning relies on brain activity, and given that the brain itself is a product of evolution, it logically follows that the mind is also a product of evolution. Additionally, various fundamental aspects of the human mind can be directly linked to survival and reproductive success. For instance, fear drives the avoidance of threats, while desire motivates behaviors conducive to procreation. The argument for the mind's evolutionary origins is compelling. Once we acknowledge the mind's evolutionary underpinnings, our perception of the mind and its role in the natural world undergoes a profound shift. A recurrent theme in global belief systems involves the notion that humans consist of two distinct and separable components: a physical body and an intangible mind or soul. While not universally held, this perspective is not solely confined to Western traditions, as is often asserted. Many individuals have subscribed to the idea that the mind exists beyond the realm of nature, a facet of ourselves that surpasses material existence and biological influences. Evolutionary theory completely upends this perspective. From the evolutionary vantage point, it becomes untenable to argue that the mind exists outside the realm of nature. Instead, it constitutes a minute component of nature, cherished solely by those small fragments of nature that possess it. The mind isn't distinct from matter. It represents a process intricately intertwined with matter. The crux is this: once we fully internalize that the mind is the outcome of a developed brain's activity, it fundamentally reshapes our understanding of the mind's role in the cosmos and our perception of the cosmos itself. The physical universe stops being an unconscious entity, passively observed and explored by conscious minds that somehow occupy a higher or external position. Conscious minds are integral to the physical universe, akin to rocks and potato peelers. Our consciousness isn't merely an observer of the universe, it's a constituent of the universe, thereby endowing the universe with partial consciousness. Contemplating the universe leads to a segment of the universe gaining consciousness of itself. Likewise, our comprehension of the universe isn't something detached from the universe, it forms a part of the universe. Consequently, for humans to fathom the universe equates to the universe comprehending itself. To borrow Carl Sagan's words, human beings are the substance of the cosmos examining itself. Darwin's theory of evolution elucidates how this phenomenon could unfold, how clusters of matter could arrange themselves in a manner that permits them to introspectively consider both themselves and the broader cosmos. Viewed from this standpoint, the narrative of the universe's history takes on a distinct complexion. For countless eons, spanning billions upon billions of years, the universe existed without any awareness of its own existence. In fact, for that extended duration, the universe remained entirely oblivious to its own being. However, a remarkable transformation commenced around 13.82 billion years after the occurrence of the Big Bang, and nearly 4 billion years subsequent to the emergence of life. What unfolded was rather intriguing. Minuscule constituents of the universe gained consciousness, acquiring knowledge about both themselves and the broader universe to which they belong. Gradually, a subset of these infinitesimal components of the universe, the entities termed scientists and scientifically informed laypeople, achieved comprehension of the Big Bang and the evolutionary processes that yielded their existence. After an eternity of unconsciousness, the universe acquired a faint inkling of its existence and a rudimentary grasp of its origins. While this might appear peculiar for a universe to accomplish, it's plausible that numerous potential universes, given ample time, could attain self-awareness. Having traced the past of the conscious universe, what then of its destiny? Various conjectures abound, ranging from exceedingly optimistic to grounded in realism. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a French Jesuit paleontologist, postulated that the universe's expansion would persist, culminating in ever-heightening levels of awareness, ultimately coalescing into a comprehensive universal consciousness, an idea he termed the Omega Point, associating it with Christ. Nonetheless, contemporary cosmology suggests that such proposals are more captivating than they are plausible. While the universe presently possesses self-awareness, the anticipated scenario of the universe succumbing to heat death renders it nearly inevitable that a time will arrive when the luminance fades, and the universe regresses into a state of unconsciousness. The duration for which the universe will retain its current state of partial consciousness hinges on its capacity to generate sentient life. Should consciousness pervade the universe, the likelihood is that pockets of consciousness on various planets will endure for a substantial duration. However, it's plausible that our planet might stand as the sole abode of mind and consciousness across the cosmos. In such a scenario, the trajectory of the universe, whether it maintains its status as a conscious entity or regresses into a state of unconsciousness, will be shaped by our choices and actions. Yet, a question arises. Does this matter significantly within the broader context? One might question if it's pure anthropocentrism to assert that a conscious universe is inherently superior to one bereft of consciousness. Conscious entities often grapple with dissatisfaction and, at times, outright misery. It's possible that, all things considered, an unconscious universe could be deemed more desirable. While these notions can be contemplated theoretically, practicality makes it challenging to evade the conclusion that it would be a profound loss if the universe were to forfeit consciousness prematurely. Still, it's plausible that the universe's destiny might involve an eternity immersed in darkness, punctuated solely by a brief instance of self-awareness in the vast expanse of nothingness.